Slavery in ancient Rome was not just a feature of society, it was one of its very foundations. It permeated every aspect of daily life, from the grandeur of imperial palaces to the humblest farmsteads, from the roaring arenas of the Colosseum to the whispered conversations in aristocratic libraries. Roman slavery was distinct from modern notions of racialized slavery. It was an institution rooted in conquest, economics, and social hierarchy. War was the primary source of new slaves. When Roman legions triumphed on the battlefield, entire populations could be condemned to bondage. Men, women, and children from Carthage, Greece, Gaul, Germania, Britannia, and the East found themselves stripped of identity, marched to slave markets, and sold to the highest bidder. Pirates also played a significant role in this grim trade, capturing travelers and coastal villagers to be ransomed or sold into servitude. Even Romans themselves were not immune. Those who fell into crippling debt might sell themselves or their children to satisfy creditors, and criminals sentenced for serious offenses could find themselves condemned to the most brutal forms of slavery, working in mines or quarries where survival was measured in months rather than years. The variety of slave experiences in Rome was staggering. At one end of the spectrum, highly educated Greek slaves served as tutors to patrician children, philosophers to senators, or skilled artisans crafting luxury goods for the elite. These individuals, though still property, often held a degree of respect and influence within households. Wealthy Romans prized such slaves for their knowledge, and some even rose to positions of great power, managing vast estates or financial affairs on behalf of their masters. Some slaves, particularly those trained as scribes, accountants, or physicians, wielded considerable responsibility, running businesses, advising officials, or even treating members of the imperial family. At the other extreme were those condemned to unthinkable suffering. Field hands in vast agricultural estates, or latifundia, toiled under the scorching Italian sun, planting and harvesting grain, olives, and grapes with little rest and no hope of freedom. The conditions in mines, particularly those in Spain and the Balkans, were even worse. There, slaves worked ceaselessly in dark, airless tunnels, extracting silver and other valuable resources for Rome's insatiable economy. Few survived long. Gladiators, many of whom were enslaved, faced an equally grim fate. Trained in brutal liberti gladiatorii, these warriors fought for the entertainment of Roman crowds, sometimes achieving fame but always living under the threat of death. Some, like the legendary Spartacus, dared to defy their fate, leading full-scale revolts that sent shockwaves through Rome. Despite the hardships, the boundaries between slave and free were not always rigid. Manumission, the formal act of granting freedom, was a possibility, particularly for those who demonstrated loyalty, skill, or the ability to amass personal wealth. A freed slave, or libertus, was not fully independent but instead became a client of their former master, expected to maintain a relationship of service and loyalty. Some freedmen, particularly those who had managed finances or trade, accumulated fortunes and even climbed the social ladder, establishing powerful families in their own right. However, the vast majority of slaves never knew freedom, and Roman law upheld their status as property, not persons. Masters held the power of life and death over their slaves, though excessive cruelty could, in theory, lead to legal repercussions. Yet, in reality, such protections were rarely enforced, and countless enslaved individuals endured lives of unrelenting hardship. Over time, the institution of slavery in Rome began to evolve. The Stoic philosophers of the late Republic and early Empire, including Seneca, questioned the morality of treating fellow humans as mere commodities, though their influence did little to alter the legal framework of slavery. More significant were the economic and demographic shifts that changed the nature of labor in the empire. As Rome's conquests slowed and the supply of new slaves diminished, landowners sought alternative solutions, gradually shifting toward a system that resembled medieval serfdom, where tenants were tied to the land rather than directly enslaved. The rise of Christianity also played a role in reshaping attitudes toward slavery. Although early Christian doctrine did not explicitly condemn the practice, it emphasized the spiritual equality of all people, gradually fostering an ideological shift that made outright slavery less palatable. By the later centuries of the empire, slavery remained widespread, but its role in society was diminishing. And yet, for all the changes that came with time, one thing remained constant: Rome's rise to power, its architectural marvels, its military triumphs, and its vast wealth had all been built, quite literally, on the backs of slaves. Their voices, seldom recorded in history, tell a story of suffering, resilience, and, at times, defiance. Though the Roman Empire is long gone, the echoes of its reliance on human bondage still linger, a reminder of the complexities and contradictions of a civilization that prided itself on law, philosophy, and engineering, while depending so heavily on the silent labor of those who had no rights, no freedom, and often, no hope.